Hey, welcome back to our weekly review of classic film and television on Vintage Film Channel, vintagefilmchannel.com, YouTube
Mm,
Vintage Film Channel. Anyway, there's a Vintage Film Channel. We're looking at the old stuff, and I got to tell you, we're loving it.
yeah, really are. As a matter of fact,
Yeah,
this week we decided to take a look at some episodes of Ozzie and Harriet, which, quite frankly, I remember watching Ozzie and Harriet because that was during the prime, like in the 50s and 60s when I would have
sure.
watched these things. And it reminds me of when I grew up, kinder, gentler, kids stay out all day, not worried about the parents worried about them being picked up off the street or anything else, just having a good time and being goofy.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I always found interesting about it, even then, when we watched that Ozzy and Harriet, we knew that the stories were kind of lame. We knew that they were making stories up about the little stuff
Right.
um, of everyday life. And Ozzy and Harriet and the boys, Rick Nelson and David Nelson, they all seemed laconic. Nobody got too excited about anything. In fact, play this first clip. The one of the shows that I watched, Vintage Film Channel has what art. I didn't count them up, but there's Vintage Film Channel. Grace has put up about six
Right.
or eight old Ozzy and Harriet shows. But that show ran for 15 years or something.
Yeah, it was a 14 seasons of 400 some odd episodes. Uh,
Amazing, isn't it?
should
Yeah,
I play this first one?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is where a neighbor comes to borrow a suitcase, right? But it turns out the neighbor borrows everything. Borrows He's got Ozzy tools and he never returns stuff.
Right.
So it's this whole episode about a neighbor who doesn't return stuff, and then Ozzy gets all
Right.
perturbed and it goes crazy, and but it's just silly little stuff like that. And of course, Ozzy is Ozzy. Look at, he's always almost always wearing a tie, even when he's home relaxing.
Right.
And
Here in the
and
garage,
yeah,
yeah,
and Harriet,
kitchen.
Harriet
Yeah.
is always wearing a dress. And you'll never see anybody in jeans. This is probably before jeans were invented, for all I know. But it's a wonderful little show, and it is about life, and it's about personalities and the quirks that we all have. But look at Ozzy and Harriet; they're just this loving couple, and all their problems are minor problems.
Right.
We should all have such big
Well,
problems, right?
actually, the Alvin and Harriet was not unlike for me. Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best. They were all
Sure.
fairly lame, particularly by today's standards. But
Oh yeah.
it's a kinder, gentler time that we lived in. As a matter of fact, when I was in Australia for a year or so, people asked me to describe Australia. This is the late 1990s. And I said, well, think of Leave It to Beaver with cell phones. It was like uh, pe- people left their doors unlocked. They didn't have
Yeah.
worries about
Yeah.
what we have today, the mass shootings and kids being abducted off the streets and all those kind of things. And so it was a time of my youth where we went out for the whole day and didn't come home
Yeah.
till dinner during the summer.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure. Your mother would say, "Go out and play.
yeah,
Leave me alone."
and you were not to show up until dinner time. There's another
Well,
one
we
here.
just
Let's take a look at another one, which one of my favorites, which was a poker game. And this David is married by this time.
yeah, that's an interesting thing. As the show went on, Rick Nelson was started out. He was like 10 years old
Mm,
when the show went on. As the show progressed, Rick Nelson decided to go into music and became a rock star.
right,
I mean, he literally became a rock and roll star.
right.
And David, by the way, went on to a career as a producer and director, very successful behind the
Yeah,
scenes. So here he is. This is a must be a later episode. Here he is with
his wife.
his bride, his new wife is
I think
visiting
her
the
name is
mother-in-law.
like June Blair or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
So it
almost
shows you
like a
how
reality show but without the drama,
Yeah, except and the reality, I'm sure, wasn't this bland.
right? But it,
But that was the charm, is the blandness. It was just you couldn't not like these people, and the problems were so mild.
also,
It
I
was
want to
fun to
actually
watch.
read something. We were watching Ernie Kovacs, the Dark Horse with Ann Savage, and things that we've talked about of My Little Margie, the show of shows, and that has always caused me to go take a look for some backstory on some of these things. And I will tell you that I never knew that Ozzy was actually
Yes.
he was in music, but
Yep.
he was a Eagle Scout at the age of 13. I didn't know that, although it makes sense. And he went to Rutgers, and he had both an undergraduate degree and he had a law degree.
Really?
Yeah. So you see a lot of the personalities today that are on all these talk shows that had law degrees. Well, he was one of
Yeah.
the first ones. He had a law degree, and then but he loved music, and I think Harriet was a dancer in musicals or things like that. So they both had really interesting backgrounds, and then they became this all American couple.
Yeah. Well, I'm almost positive Ozzy had a band. He was a
Yeah.
band
Mm.
leader, and Harriet sang.
Yeah.
Now I don't know
I think
how
that's how
big
they
their
met. That's how
career
they met
was.
eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, but they went on radio, and they're the Ozzy and Harriet show was a radio
You're
show
right.
that moved to television in 1952, which is about when most of the shows, 1950, 1952, most of the classic television shows began. That was really the beginning of television.
Right.
And so he transitioned, like a lot of people, from radio to television, produced and directed these shows himself, most of them, um, and was involved in the writing. I mean, Ozzie Nelson was really the power behind this whole series.
Right. And the interesting things are we all know Ricky Nelson became a teen idol.
Right?
Uh, and David did uh, producing and directing. I also seem to remember he was in a some kind of circus film like Burt Lancaster was, that he had the circus background. I didn't
Really?
go into him that much,
Yeah.
but they're all gone now. I think
Yeah.
David was the last one to go in the mid 2008, 9, 10 area.
Sure.
Uh, but they were a family that were, just this all American people.
Yep.
His David and his wife. And
Yeah.
I think what happened was that she had baked a cake or something, and he wound up serving it to his poker guys because he didn't realize that it was an anniversary of the day they met or got engaged or
Yeah.
something. So all this kind of silly stuff. But they were just nice people. They were your next door neighbors. They were
And you just found yourself wanting to tune in every week to see.
absolutely
I find it funny that they called it The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. It wasn't very adventuresome, believe me, but it was a great show, great series. And you're right, it's wonderful to look back at this time when they could, even though they were idealizing,
right.
the culture, if you will, they still weren't that far off the mark. And that's what it was like. Women wore dresses. Everybody in this show, all the men are in cardigans half the time.
Mm. And like you
Cardigans,
say,
sweaters.
ties inappropriately in the
Yeah,
garage or
yeah,
doing whatever they do. But
yep,
anyway, so we're
yep,
sort of at the end of this episode. But the really fun thing is that the Vintage Film Channel has put together this eclectic collection of
yeah,
feature-length films and TV series, bits and pieces of all of them, and they're just fun to watch. And like I say, for me, I get pleasure not only of seeing things that I either remembered or semi-remembered, and now I got a chance to take a closer look at it. But also,
yeah,
I then go ahead and I research some of the things like the background of Ozzie and Harriet,
sure,
and if you go back to Ernie Kovacs, he and Steve Allen were the primary people who influenced the way I felt about comedy back in the early
yeah,
days. So it brings back great memories, and it's just a kick. So we encourage you to go to Vintage Film Channel, both on YouTube and vintagefilmchannel.com, and
Yep.
go back and relive some things that probably will give you some very warm memories.
Sure. And when you go to vintagefilmchannel.com, look at their playlists.
Mm,
That's where you'll find a lot of the TV series like Ozzie and Harriet. I think Gracie has rescued maybe a dozen tops Ozzie and Harriets out of what 400, something like that.
right.
But you'll find them on the playlist, and then you can pick and choose and binge watch or scan between them. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, let's wait. So let's do a shameless plug. When you go to Vintage Film Channel on YouTube, subscribe. Okay, help her build her audience. And when you go to, so if you like Vintage Film Channel, two old guys talking about stuff, subscribe to our channel as well. Help us out. In any event, thank you for
Good.
joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you to talk about Siskel and Ebert, to borrow from them, in our version of The Balcony.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.